Electric cars are everywhere now. They're easy to drive and they accelerate fast, but using them the wrong way could do serious damage. If you want to make sure you're using your electric car correctly, then let me, an automotive technologist, teach you the 19 things that you should never do in an electric car. I'm going to cover mistakes that you might not even realise that you're making, with one tip that might completely change what you think and know about electric car ownership. Because people are treating electric cars like petrol and diesel cars, and they are not the same, which brings me on to my first point. There's no changing gears, no engine noise, and the way electric motors work versus petrol and diesel cars and engines is totally different. You get much quicker acceleration, less drama, and an overall smoother driving experience in an electric car. There's no clutch either, just neutral, drive, reverse, and some different driving modes that you can configure in the menus. So the first tip is to never assume what the dashboard says is an accurate representation of how much range you're going to have left in the car. As the car, especially when it's new and understanding your driving style, is always adjusting its range figure depending on how you drive. And I'll get onto it later, but the summer and winter range is totally different as well. So never assume that you're going to get the accurate represented range of your electric car from the range meter on the dashboard. Also, in an electric car, the brakes are hardly ever used if you drive it correctly. And that brings me on to my next point about braking. Regen braking is one of the best perks of an electric car because it gives you free energy when you want to slow the car down. Lots of electric cars today have something called one pedal driving, which means that when you take your foot off the accelerator, the car will slow down enough, and the regen will top up the battery this method as well, and you won't even need to touch the brakes because the regen braking and one pedal driving, it's called, will actually stop the car entirely using this one pedal. So the next tip is to not use the brakes if you don't have to. Before you buy a used electric car, it's important to know how healthy the battery is, because the battery is one of the most expensive parts of an electric car, and its condition will affect how far it can go and how long it will last. Now, the Leaf Spy app is something that I use for this particular car because it's a Nissan Leaf, and it was developed to tap into the computers and battery software to understand exactly the state of health of the battery, how long it will go on a charge accurately, and what kind of cell voltages there are between each of the battery packs within the main pack itself. Most other electric cars don't work with Leaf Spy, so you need to find a different app to use for checking the battery health before you buy an electric car. It's important you also pair it with one of these, which is an OBD connector, and it connects to your diagnostics port and links your phone to the app to the car. So you need to obviously buy one of these, link in the description if you want to buy one of these. So if you try to buy a used electric car without checking the battery health first, you could end up with a car that doesn't do as many miles on a single charge as you thought. And also you could end up with a large bill at the end of it because the battery health has degraded too much. If you want me to do a deep dive to understand how to check the battery range and health exactly before you buy a used electric car, then hit subscribe and I'll do a future video on this. The next one is you never have to visit one of these again. I often think about the amount of time I've saved by not going to a petrol station and instead just either topping up when I'm going shopping and plugging the car in, or I just do what I do 99% of the time and get home and plug it in at home. And also the amount of money I've saved charging my electric car at home. It only cost me about £1.50 to top up from 0 to 100% overnight. Now, people think that it takes hours to fill up your electric car battery, but it doesn't. It just takes 2 seconds to plug it in, and then the car does the rest, say overnight, or if you're going shopping, then you go shopping, come back and unplug it, and then it'll be topped up. So there's no need to worry about this at all. And all of that actually brings me on to my next point. Also, if you're charging at home, never assume that you've got the right energy tariff for your needs. You could end up spending over 4 times the amount on a single charge than you would if you get a favourable rate at a certain time or when you plug in your car using a smart tariff. I use Eon NextDrive to charge my electric car overnight at a rate of 6.7 pence per kilowatt hour. Now that tariff has gone, but you can still get really good savings at around 7 or 8 pence per kilowatt hour during the overnight tariff. Also, make sure you schedule your charging overnight during these cheap electricity times. Use the car's settings to make sure when you wake up in the morning and ready to leave for work that your car is fully charged and utilising that cheaper rate overnight. And making sure that you obviously charge within that cheapest rate depending on your electricity tariff. So do check out the other video on this where I did a deep dive on the 5 best electricity tariffs. It's been said 1,000 times, but it's really nice in the morning when you wake up and unplug your car to find that it's fully charged and ready to go for your journey for the day. But you should be careful when you actually charge your electric car And that gets me on to my next point. Next is you should never leave the battery at 100% for a long time. Let me explain. When it's kept at 100%, the battery gets stressed. Think of it like holding a stretched rubber band all day. Eventually it's going to crack and wear down quicker. At 100%, the battery is under pressure and it will slowly damage the internal chemistry. The damage will build up over time and it will reduce the amount of total energy that the battery is able to store. And heat makes this happen even faster. That's why car makers often suggest that you should only charge your car up to 80 or 90% for everyday use and to 100% only when you absolutely need it for long road trips. Finally, if you do charge it to 100%, make sure that you drive the car that day. Next point is that EVs still need to be maintained. There's brakes, there's wipers, suspension, tyres, mechanical work, all still needs to be done in an electric car. Even though it has no engine and no oil changes, there is a reduction gear in this particular car which involves driving the wheels and the motors, and that has oil in it, and so that fluid needs to be changed every 60,000 miles. So it's important you keep on top of your electric car maintenance too, depending on the car that you've got. Whilst the battery doesn't need any oil changes as such, there is still technically coolant in some of the batteries, and often it doesn't need replacing and will last the life of the car, but make sure that you check that about your electric car before you look to maintain it. So anyway, what about the battery? Let's get on to my next point. Next is you should never leave your car plugged in at a public charger. When I visited the public chargers in my area, they weren't that busy, but that didn't mean that people didn't want to use them. You leaving your car at a public charger for long enough could actually cause you a fine or overstay fees in some cases. Do check out my other video on that where I went to test all the different public chargers in my area. But the rule here is don't leave your car plugged in and in a parking spot, which means that you're charging your car. Instead, when it's finished charging and you want to stay in the area, just unplug the car and move to a normal spot. Next is you should never forget to precondition the car when you're going on a long road trip or needing to charge at a public charger. Even if you're in the depths of winter and overnight you're charging your electric car at home, it's always important to precondition the cabin so it's nice and warm when you leave in the morning for work, and also precondition the batteries to make sure when you're on a long road trip to optimize the charging speed and charging rate. Some modern EVs allow you to precondition the battery. This is controlled on an app or within the car itself. The preconditioning makes sure that the battery is at an optimized temperature to allow it to fully charge at a quick rate. It also protects the battery for degradation, ensuring that the cells are ready to be charged, because it prevents the battery from accepting a high state of current when it's too hot or too cold. Now, speaking of testing, your tyres make a huge difference in the amount of range and your safety of your electric car. Not having the correct tyre pressures can mean poor braking distance, poor handling and worse battery range. And also it means that you'll have less reaction time in a crash, because the tyres have low pressure and that means that it takes longer for them to react to your steering input. Plus, it's important to always inspect the tread as well and also check for uneven wear to ensure that your suspension and alignment is correct. Just do a quick Google search on the car you have and look at the tyre size of your particular model to check which pressures are suitable for your electric car. Make sure to check them twice a month. Now, the next mistake is not having any apps when you go and plug and charge your electric car in a public charger. And also you should never rely on a single charging app either. Just tapping your credit card or your phone without using any apps could cost you a lot of money when you go out on public charge. The two apps that are recommended in this space minimum are the Electroverse app and also ZapMap. Electroverse is for paying and managing everything on the app, and ZapMap is used for finding a charger in the first place, which covers a wide range of networks, if not all of them. But there are plenty of others where you might get extra discount too if you use their app. So do check out the other video on this where I went through lots of different chargers during the day and I found out which ones offer the best perks and have the best prices. Next one is definitely do not try to repair the battery of your electric car yourself. Definitely don't touch the battery unless you're 100% qualified. It's high voltage, usually 400 or even 800 volts these days, and that could really cause some harm. Of course, you can change your 12 volt battery, the small one, no problem at all. But don't assume if you're an average mechanic or even a good mechanic that you can use your knowledge on an electric car when you're used to working on a petrol or diesel car, because they're totally different in terms of the way that they work and operate, and it's very, very dangerous. So do not touch the car unless you know and are qualified about what you're doing. So anyway, how should you treat your battery? Also, it's important to not make the same mistakes that I did and purposely drive the car to 0% out of battery in the name of science. Cut to me running out of charge. Oh, it's died. We're just coasting. We're in neutral. Okay, it's died. If you have an older electric car, it's always best to get breakdown cover because modern policies nowadays and vans actually have built-in batteries and allow you to top up a little bit so you can get on your way, or they will drive you to your nearest charger and tow your car so you can get topped up. It also is good for when you have a tyre that you can't fix on the side of the road, or if there's any other mechanical issues with the car, as it just gives you that peace of mind, and it just costs around £30 a year. Also, having 0% battery over time can cause battery degradation, so it's best to always keep it between 20 and 80% or around 50% battery as much as you possibly can. Now, some chargers, especially when you charge at a destination charger, perhaps out at a restaurant or supermarket or hotel, they don't come with the charge cable, so never forget to bring your charge cable with you. They have something called untethered connection, which means that there's no cable attached to the charger itself. And if you have a car like mine, you'll need this adapter, which changes from type 1 to type 2, and that means that it will be working in the UK. As this car is so old, it originally was intended to work in the US and across the world, where they didn't really decide on the type of chargers to be used, so make sure you check your charging port for your electric car as well. Most of them are type 2 these days, so there's no need to worry about this. Also, never rapid charge to 100%, as it takes way too long after 80% and the charging actually slows down rapidly. And it's also inconsiderate because someone else might want to charge at your spot and you're not letting them because you're wasting 90 to 100% battery time, taking about half an hour, when you could just go home and in realistic time that you won't need to charge your car to 100% either. Anyway, public charging is expensive, so why would you waste so much money on it when you could just go home and charge at home? It's also important to understand the conditions and the temperatures that you're in, because winter and summer range are totally different in an electric car, just as they are in a petrol car. And you must realise that yes, electric cars will lose some range in the winter. If you choose poorly, then it could lose around 30% of range. But if you choose a Polestar 3, according to a Norwegian test they did in the depths of winter last year, is that it could actually only lose around 5% of range. But that was according to WLTP range figures, which gets on to my next problem, so let me explain. Because the next tip is to ignore and never assume that the WLTP range when you look to buy an electric car is always accurate. But it is the only range figure that car companies are allowed to advertise with. Instead though, I would always check online at evdatabase.org to understand exactly how much range you're realistically going to get. They've got two great examples of summer and mild weather, and also extremely cold temperatures to understand the range difference. And they've got accurate data from users, they've got real world tests that they do, and they've got much more accurate models to understand the realistic world, because WLTP tests are flawed. Now, the reason why WLTP range is so inflated, because the test is not very accurate. It only gives you a constantly slow speed, and it doesn't account for higher speed motorway driving, it doesn't account for different temperatures, and doesn't even account for using your AC or heating. So definitely check EV Database out for realistic range figures that are much more accurate and real world. When you're out and about charging, don't make the same mistake that I did. I nearly did this once because I didn't know the etiquette around it. It's also because I really needed to top up, and I was doing a very specific challenge where I was only using free chargers. And yes, they do exist, and it is possible to do an entire road trip, so check out my other video on that after this. I nearly had to unplug someone else's cable because I was running out of time at the parking spot that I was in. I was only allowed 2 hours, so the rule here is to never unplug someone else's car. Even if it doesn't look like it's being used for charging, or if the battery's full, it is still tampering with another person's car. Plus, it's not necessarily always possible to unplug someone else's car, because each charger cable and port has its own kind of locking mechanism, either when it's during charging or when the car is locked, where a pin will lock into the connector and not be able to pull it out to unplug it. The owner is not going to like it anyway as well, and you're probably going to be monitored on CCTV anyway, so don't get caught and don't even bother trying. Finally, when you buy an electric car, don't assume that it will charge at a public charger in just 10 minutes. So never fail to check the charging maximum speed of that electric car, because all of them are different. Yes, they can charge at public chargers at very high speeds, but don't assume that. But if you're buying an older electric car like this one, it only has a maximum of 50 kilowatts charging speed, which usually takes about an hour to get from 0 to 100%. But there are now 800 volt models and charging speeds of up to 400 kilowatts, which could get you around a realistic 200 miles of added range in just 10 minutes. But you do have to have the right car and the right charger to do that. And the technology hasn't quite got there yet. We are getting close though. So before you buy an electric car, always check the charging speeds of the particular model you're buying and make sure that it's a charging speed that fits your needs and your daily commutes and long road trips if you're going on them. Or if you're going to use the car 99% of the time, driving from home to work and around town, or even on a bit longer road trips, then you're most likely going to be in a position where you've considered charging at home. So you don't need to worry about this too much and worry about the charging speeds. I'm only talking about rapid charging at public chargers here. Now, did you find this list useful? You can get your own downloadable PDF copy using the link in the description to understand exactly the 19 mistakes that you should avoid making when you go and buy and drive an electric car. So check this video out next as well, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Peace out.